Hello, I'd like to welcome Dr. Velma Latson, as well as students Calvin Dery and Bryson Stringer from Bowie State University to discuss their experience with the recent completion of the FICO Educational Challenge. FICO is proud to partner with Bowie State University for the second year, and we congratulate you all on completing the challenge. I want to dive into your experiences with this year two program. But first, I want to reiterate for everyone that's listening in, what is the Analytic Challenge? This FICO Educational Challenge presents students with a real-world challenge in data science. It's intended to prepare them for careers in financial services industries, specifically in data science and AI. As we know, AI is being used across many industries, and our team is working to teach the next generation of data scientists how to use this technology responsibly, ethically, and frankly, practically. Now in its second year, the current Analytic Challenge focuses on the unique challenge of transaction analytics and fraud detection. Students were taught how to design machine learning algorithms which would predict fraud in a series of financial transactions. As part of the challenge, the students had the opportunity to be mentored by myself, my team of data scientists, and to work through this program together. I've invited two students here, Calvin and Bryson, to give us their perspectives. But before I get to the students, I have a few questions for you, Dr. Latson.
Sure.
First off, can you tell our audience a little bit about your career and what you're currently teaching at Bowie State University?
Sure. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Technology and Security at Bowie State University. And our department is a unique department because it combines programming, it combines data science, cybersecurity, and network infrastructure for our students to participate in. So our students are able to walk out and have a wealth of different talents and skill sets that they bring to the workplace. I myself have over 20 some odd years in cybersecurity. I started out in the Air Force supporting the Pentagon back before cybersecurity was even a big word at that point. And then my academic pursuits helped me to engage students in cybersecurity and technology, and engineering is where I am now at Bowie State University.
Got it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I love cybersecurity. It's one of my passions. Maybe that'll be year 3 for us in the challenge. Can you share, this is the second year for Bowie State University, and we appreciate the partnership and the participation. Went through year 1, and now you've just successfully completed with presentations today, the second year. So why did you decide to participate in year 2 of the challenge?
So let me just further bring in my partner in crime in this challenge was Dr. Stephanie Miller, who is the true data scientist in this project. And so she and I work collaboratively together to bring the students where they are in the challenge. And again, that's the beauty of our department. We have many different faculty members who are able to bring a wealth of talent and background subject matter experts to these challenges. So the reason that Bowie decided to participate again in the second year is because of the success we had from the first year. The first year challenge brought the rigor. It brought the real world experience to the students in the classroom. It brought the skills or the importance of collaboration, working in a group, working with a team. And most often it also brought to the group the importance of the messiness of problem solving when it comes to data analytics. So having the opportunity to do it again was welcomed, and next time also.
Yeah, nice. All right, a commit for year 3. Well, it's good to hear, and one of the things that's really important is this sort of multidisciplinary vantage point. It's actually more important than many people would imagine, right? When we develop AI, and so the approach that you have at Bowie is really important because that's kind of how the world has to work. These problems are so complex that we need lots of different skill sets and perspectives, and so it sounds like a perfect match. Now, this analytics challenge this year, right? Really, we doubled down on like the technical hardness, I think, right? We had transaction data, which is a problem that many students don't even work with at the graduate level of their studies in data science very often. And we had financial fraud detection, which is one of a problem that hits many people, right? Even in today's discussions, right? We had a discussion of someone's grandmother who was impacted by fraud and just feeling like they could make a difference by understanding how to detect this fraud. And so, we have this real world problem with real world complexity. And I was just curious, like, how did the students initially react to the amount of data and the complexity of trying to find fraud in transaction data?
So I think they found they found it overwhelming until I had to explain to them, you don't have to eat the whole thing at one time, right? We're going to take this off, and we're going to take the approach the way the data science cycle works, right, in pieces. So we're going to break this up into pieces. And I think what I found most interesting that they didn't realize was actually the amount of research that also goes into understanding these challenges. So part of the so I had to bring that aspect for it. It's okay to understand the tools, and it's okay to realize what the tools will do for you, right? But to understand how you use the tools, when is it appropriate to use the tool? And then that way you're making decisions about when and how to use the tools. And then what is the outcome of using that tool? That's from research. So the students actually had to dive very deeply into credit card fraud. They had to read, they had to go do some other outside independent reading to understand what the challenge actually meant. Learning a tool is really, I think that's the easiest part of it, right? But the analytics, understanding the problem, realizing the features. And I thought something was really keen said this afternoon was when one of the teams, came up with this whole new feature, right? And you said, if it's not in the data, how do you bring out that feature, right? And so I think part of the research made an impact with that particular learning process, right? So as they're learning, as they're bringing in their coursework, they're able to come to an understanding greater than just looking at how the tools can be used. So I love the research. I'm a researcher. I loved every time they came to me with a feature. My question to them was, well, why is that feature important? You need to go back. You need to understand what's happening with the data. And then you brought it home really well when you started asking them. I used a different word, though. I said, well, what's your baseline for this analysis, right? So what is the normalcy that you're gaining from this exploratory process about the data? What is normal, right? And so that's what I found most enriching, was the fact that they really had to extend themselves with the research to really understand the data, and then to be able to understand what it meant once the models were run, how the outputs were understood, how they were understood.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think this is like what you mentioned about you don't have to eat it all at right now, right? I mean, breaking things down into problems is I think a really great way that the students approached it, and you advise them, because sometimes these problems that we deal with in the real world, right? They make the classroom problems look pretty straightforward, and they're supposed to be straightforward because it's about learning a tool or a technique, as you mentioned, right? And having that skill, right? Like driving a car is important to have, but taking that car and, let's say, racing on a racetrack is a whole different set of experiences. And I think I'm really impressed, actually, because this was not an easy challenge. I'm really impressed with all the students, but I'm impressed with the fact that we empower them with a real life problem, real life complexity, and then give them the tools. And part of those tools, right, is how you go about your work, break it into pieces, right? Really important. And I also think in today's day and age where, we somehow expect AI just to be a button we push and everything comes out, right? We don't have to think, right? You absolutely mentored the students along with, with everyone else to say, hey, think about this, right? Really think about what features you're producing, right? And I think it came through quite a bit. I was actually really impressed with the students today, and impressed with the fact they spent their time thinking about, like, this is why I did it. This is why I wanted this sort of feature. This is why it makes sense to me as a human being that experiences the problem, or, is thinking about this problem. And, that's what really differentiates people that can run tools and people that build solutions. And I think that's great.
Absolutely. I would like to add, though, I think part of that, what you said, is bringing that real world experience to them, having them engage in that particular domain that's important at that time, and to understand, again, as you said, what that means, right? What is that? The real world problems is not as cut and dry as you might think it is when you get to the workplace. And so, I think those are really key features that are important in this FICO challenge. I think those are if I had to rank what I believe was most important, it's just that real world. I mean, just what actually happens when you're out there trying to solve these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was interesting. We had a little bit of a conversation at the end, and I felt like the grandparent, and you're the parent, because you said, I'm sitting there, just shining with all the accomplishments of the teams, and you kind of admitted that's a little harder on your end, wrangling the students and the teams, and so it's not often that I get that sort of the flip side where I can just enjoy the fruits of all that work, and it actually talks to, like, everything that Professor Miller did and you've done to drive this, right, and make those teams successful. And so maybe my last question before we speak to students is just, what's your advice for professors that might be considering entering this challenge in the future, and in terms of what their roles are? And, like, one is like benefits, but two is like, how do you engage with a company like FICO, right? That is bringing mentors and industry experience, but you're on the ground with the students, and trying to make sure that they're pushing forward, and it's hard, right? This is not easy. So, what's your thoughts, and what would you share with your peers out there in the industry if they're to look to do these sort of challenges?
First, I want to say FICO is a great partner because your team actually listens to us. So when we are setting up the schedule for the courses and we're setting up the challenges, your team is listening to our dates. This is when the students are on break. This is when we have final exams. So part of my job, for lack of a better term, as the project manager for this particular piece, right, as they're going through this, is to make sure that we're communicating with FICO what we really need. And so those things we found from the first challenge, that academic calendar is important. Those students are taking classes. So being a great partner, FICO is willing to be flexible with those dates and those times and things like that. So that's one thing to consider. And the student workload is another thing. My most challenging piece that I would recommend is we really need to engage our students with a group dynamic to make sure that they understand the importance of communication. So one of the things that I had a difficult time with, and I can't really, I don't want to put, it was just a difficult process, is the communication. These students are taking classes, they have outside commitments. We're trying to channel times that all the teams can meet at one time, and so communication, we need to make sure we improve upon for our teams on this side of the coin. So, and making sure that those students understand the research component that's going to be necessary for if they take on this challenge, and the presentation skills and the communication skills. So those are where I think I made the most impact, making sure communication was there, or trying to, as best I could, right? Making sure the group dynamic stayed intact. And unfortunately, we did have one participant who had taken on too much. And so she was not able to continue, but she really provided a great contribution at the very beginning. But knowing her limitations as well, she was able to communicate that well. And so she wasn't able to finish. But those things are expected with any large project on the job. Someone may be pulled off for another task. And so these teams have to realize that now you just have to step up where that person may not be able to be there anymore to do this work. So it was a challenge, but I think overall I learned, and so did the students.
That's great. And you know, and frankly, you know, I look at like our work at FICO or any project, right? And you know, yeah, communication and expectations and timelines and realism and how long things take, and occasionally saying I can't get there from here, right? Like this young lady that had to take a break, all super important, right? This is real life stuff, and so you know, in some sense, it's really a microcosm for like their first jobs, particularly if they're in data science or any technical field. So perfect. Okay, well then. Thank you, Dr. Latson. Let me turn over to the students. Let's see what their perspectives are on the challenge. So welcoming here, Calvin and Bryson. First of all, I want to congratulate you on completing the FICO Educational Challenge. And I also want to thank you for agreeing to be here with me discussing it. And so in sharing your insights.
Of course, no problem.
Excellent. Can you maybe start by, you know, I always think it's fun to talk about team names. So, you know, we break into teams, right? And the teams compete and there's a judging. We have not announced Bowie State University rankings yet in terms of teams, but you just had your presentations today. So, you know, how did you, and you're both on the same team. So can you explain or mention, you know, what's your team name and how did you form as a team and maybe how did you grow as a team, right? How you form and how you end up is two different things. So tell me a little bit about that dynamic, guys.
Okay, so I'll start. So for us, our team, of course, is Clocked In. That's the name we decide on. And admittedly, it was a spur of the moment thing for me when I came up with it. And it was just something we rolled with because it's just a matter of, you have, okay, clocking into work, which is kind of what we were doing with this whole challenge. And then you have locking in, the concept of, you know, we have to get stuff done. So that's the origin of that name for the most part. And so while she isn't here as well, we also have our team member, Shanice. Mm-hmm. She was a part of this whole thing as well. We don't want to discredit her or for any of her efforts in it as well. But as for our team dynamic, it mainly was, of course, we had to understand like what each person is doing. Because even though we're like same major, same track and all that, we don't have the same classes. We're at different points in our like academic careers, all of that. We have different obligations, whole thing. But for us, it was just a matter of constant like text communication, figuring out, setting up meetings sometimes once or twice a week, what we can do, what kind of scheduling we can work with. And for the most part, all of us, we at least had a professional level understanding of, okay, if one day can't work, we'll make another day. If 1 week can't work, we'll maybe do another week. If one time can't work, we'll do something else. So for us, we did come in with that understanding of each other's circumstances, and we were, I would say, quite respectful of them. And I'll turn it on to Calvin for him to add his 2 cents into it.
Yeah, I will say starting off, we were kind of understanding of each other, but as we went on with the challenge, started working on each other, we're a lot more friendly than we are now. I like to say that I made 2 new friends as we started off. I didn't know each other, but now we are pretty good, pretty friendly. We work together as a team. We know when we have too much on our plates and we need to give it to somebody else, or somebody else needs to work on this, work on the PowerPoint, work on the models, what we believe our ideas are, and we all respect each other's ideas and how we should value our model, which features we should keep, how we should build our model.
Perfect. And, you know, that's great. And it's great to hear that you guys are all friends at the end, right? Which is also awesome. And, you know, I think one of the things about team, I try to ask this question because you all spend a lot of time together, right? And it's not always easy, and there's frustration and challenges and along the way. And you know, it's good that at the end you all still like each other. But in addition to that, I'd say, you know, what I found, and maybe you found it too, is, you know, strong teams, particularly, you know, in industry and anywhere, right, really comes down to knowing, you know, what you're good at, but more importantly, what you're maybe not as good at, right? And then finding those people that, you know, could be a little bit better at those things, right? And then, you know, that's how we get the, 1 + 1 or 1 + 1 + 1, in this case, 3, right, equals 7, right? And I think, I'm sure that's probably something you noticed, right, across the 3 of you, where, you know, one would defer to have a little more strength in one area versus another, and the team as it all probably benefited based on that.
Definitely, yes. Definitely. I know, especially Calvin can attest to that himself personally, because it was just a matter of we would have our own delegation of tasks, of course, but it was Calvin who was like taking on the brunt of this kind of thing, I would say. But it was just, we helped him along the way, did what we had to do. But honestly, he's the all-star of the team, if I had to say anybody in particular. Of course, we all got there in the end. We all did our part. Of course, no one skimped out. But honestly, him in particular, I need to give him props for, because he put things in perspective when we didn't understand it. He gave us the idea of a direction where to go when we didn't have any, and just everything in between. So it honestly is a marvel for him that we had him.
I love it. I love it. Well, Calvin, that's strong props, and and frankly illustrates the point, right? That the whole team wins when we recognize who has different strengths in which areas, and frankly, it's when we embrace each other's strengths that we all get ahead, right? And appreciate it. So, hey, Calvin, since you were like one of the drivers here, right? You probably took the first sort of brunt of working with some of this data, right? And I talked with Dr. Latson how it was a real real grown up, real serious data set. And so I was just curious, when you first looked at this, was that overwhelming to you and the team? What was your impressions when you first started to work with this data?
When we first looked at the data set, and me personally, it was very overwhelming. Just the sheer amount of data, the sheer amount of variables, and then having to add in which variables you can use and can't use through the ethical and legal reasons. We didn't know where to start at first, so we're trying to value which features to keep. Which variables to look into, which variables we think should be valuable. So that's when we started doing more research on credit fraud itself and seeing the data set, which ones we believe should be valued the most at first. And that kind of helped us understand the data set and keep us leveled looking at the data. Because looking at it, we were kind of overwhelmed, and then it was hard to kind of work on it as the amount of data. But as a team, we sat down together, we all talked about it. Then we started doing more research on the data, and then it kind of became cake work, just more tedious at the end.
Got it. Kind of like what Dr. Latson said, right? If you break it into pieces, right? Each piece seems like you can get there, right? Or I do a lot of hiking, and so like sometimes when you have a long hike, you have to just get to the next rock or the next valley, and then before you know it, you where you need to get to, right?
Pace yourself.
Yeah, pace yourself too, and don't burn out right at the beginning. So, well. So Bryson, let me ask you a question about you mentioned that there's different strengths on the team, and I was just curious, one of the things that we had in this FICO challenge, it was members of my team, mentors, right, that would spend a lot of time with different teams, and I think it's super important because it allows the teams to get to work with industry data scientists, right, and to partner with them. So. I was curious if you could provide any insight around, what was it like to work with the mentors, and how did they assist in the process, or maybe change the way you looked at data science while they collaborated to check in and go through material and make sure you kind of see how we build these models, but moreover, come to aid where you need some help or maybe the team had questions. What was that all like? What was the day in the life of your team?
Yes, of course, I can take that. So to begin with, in particular, with that being the topic, I want to shout out Zoldi and Quentin on that, because we were consulting during this whole thing, and it was talks, getting to know them at the office hours and all. But then it was like, okay, now that we are more familiar with each other, it's like, hey, here's my work. I need you to kind of assess this. It was a matter of giving direction to the directionless, because again, with how being overwhelmed by the data sets, feature generation, all of that. So it's just like, okay, I have the baseline of, I need to do a trend analysis. I need to analyze my features, like potency. How effective is it? I need to get an idea of how to make a new feature. What's that look like? And so during working with them and all of that, it just came down to okay, hey, it's not as hard as it sounds, but this is the way they kind of go about it. And it was just, I appreciated that they gave us an outline. Of course, they didn't do the project for us. They didn't like tell us, oh, like, yo, you can just make a feature like this, blah, blah, blah. No, but it was a proper like, hey, here's an outline and here's an example of how we kind of do it without giving too much to us, so that we still have our own creative freedom during that whole process. So it was just a matter of, again, they would kind of give us direction when we felt like a bit lost. So that's the main thing I appreciated during that entire like communication with them, matter of office hours, let it be during the actual lectures, or the numerous emails we had to start sending to them, especially near the end, because we had to send quite a bit just for like complete clarification, especially for us. We were on a kind of almost perfectionist mentality of, oh, we need to get in this certain range for all our scores, for all the test data sets, all of that. It was just a matter of, hey, no, you could take it back. You can, what you have is good, or like what you have is perfectly fine. It's serviceable, all of that. So honestly, just the reassurance, the guidance, it was the main thing that I appreciate and that we as a whole appreciated, I would say.
Well, that's
definitely shout outs to them.
Well, thank you for that. And I know that they very much enjoyed mentoring and being part of that project. And I think one of the things that I enjoy about this model with mentorship is that, they don't know the right way, right? They know many ways to solve the problems, right? And they're going to follow your lead and be part of your team, right? And so talking about team again, right? These are people that can help drive that direction, support the direction. And, particularly with Bowie State University, the presentations I saw today, I think I made the comment that all three had different ways of exploring the problem, and all three had really unique insights in different ways. And I think that just shows, right, the amount of creativity and individualization, right? Like, for example, your team, you spent a lot more time on like the model architecture and exploring, what that looked like. And that was, one of the first times I've seen that. And so like, I just think that's one of the great things also is just, they're there to support, right? And to help to push along, but it really just to enable and enhance what you already are doing, right? And helping you meet that vision.
They did a phenomenal job.
Excellent. So, one of the things that's really important to me personally and to FICO overall, right, is to train and support a diverse and talented group of students who will drive the future of AI innovation and responsible AI practices. It's super important. And, all we have to do is look at where the industry is today and how rapidly it's evolving. We need new perspectives and we need new creativity. And we certainly saw that even the presentations today. People are very creative in terms of the features and the approaches. And so, I think it's been a big success from that perspective. I was just curious, how do you both, this is both of you, right? How do you both think that this challenge will help enhance, your future directions, hopefully in data science, but whatever paths you want to take? I mean, what do you take away from this as things that you have learned or places you want to continue to explore in terms of data science?
I would like to say a lot of the skills that we learned over the FICO challenge was a lot of AI machine learning and the architecture. Like, we focused on that more as we believed our features, as we kept adding and getting rid of features, we weren't seeing that much improvement. So we decided, let's look at the other side of the architecture. So we kind of learned a lot on that side, learned a lot about AI machine learning, got more into the feature engineering aspect too as well, which helped us learn a lot about making models and that model, log reg models. Overall, it's very valuable as now, in my opinion, in my experience, I didn't know much about any of this stuff. Now I got a lot of experience into it, as now I believe I can make my own model, get a pretty efficient model, know what features to add in, what to look for, and what to mess around with in architecture.
Excellent. Bryson?
Yeah, and I'll kind of like bounce off that. Mainly, I see this whole thing, especially in terms on the AI side, it's an opportunity to kind of like bounce up into that kind of whole scene, because it's a growing field, and tech already itself is an ever growing field, but now you have the AI itself. And so I know you go on about how like people shouldn't be afraid of AI. It's not going to take our jobs. And like seeing it hands on, seeing how it's integrated into these companies and how they're using it, it opened up a world for me, because it's just now a matter of, okay, this is the future. This is where we're headed. And it's like, me personally, I was never like one of the people who subscribes to the notion of, oh yeah, AI is going to take our jobs. No, I didn't believe that. But I admittedly didn't know how it was going to be used like that. It's like, oh yeah, you see things like ChatGPT and all. It's like, okay, yeah, it's cool and all that. But really, like in company, like business operations, how are they actually using AI? And seeing it on display here, even working with it on display here, just mind boggled me. It just gives me such a way, because now it's a matter of, okay, now I see where they're going with this. So even when I go into like, even if I don't go directly into data science, data analytics position like that, from when I see, oh, hey, we're working with AI, well, now I have an idea of, okay, now I have a better idea of the questions to be asking them or what to be looking for when it comes to AI. So that's my whole thing when it comes to this. I just am glad to have finally got my feet in the door with this kind of thing, with this kind of knowledge myself, let alone get hands-on experience, hands-on teaching experience with it as well. So
Beautiful.
it's a wonder. It's a world of wonder, let me tell you.
That's great. Well, and frankly, I love both your observations, and I also love the fact that, there is concern about AI and AI taking jobs, but the what the really workforce is going to be about is about the human and the AI working together, and that's what your team did, right? You used the human intuition and knowledge and research, and then the tools to help empower and superpower certain parts of that. And so I'm really pleased with that. And I assume both you gentlemen would recommend this to other college students that would have an opportunity to do the challenge.
Yeah? Oh, absolutely.
Easily.
Beautiful. All right. Well, let's call Dr. Latson back in, and we will wrap it up. So I wanted to just express my sincere gratitude to Bowie State University again. I mean, I'm really proud. I like a proud grandpa watching each of the teams just really be very impressive. And it was a lot of work, and it's not lost on me. But I also think that from my perspective, the students drove a lot of benefits from it. And I just, I want to thank you all. And I just wanted to see if you have any other comments before we close up.
For me, I would like to just say that, again, the challenge brought a wealth of insight for the students. These are things that I cannot do. No, faculty, we're not able to do ourselves. We try to, but it just drives, again, the importance of industry partners who are willing to make a difference. And I think one thing that I want to say is a real huge takeaway, and FICO's commitment to diversity and responsible AI is that you need the voices. So the students brought their own personal experiences when they were looking at the features. You have a diverse group of students who had a different approach to looking at the data. And I think all of that encompasses or frames the importance of how you have a diverse group of people who are looking at the data, digesting the data, and then having a different take on what that actually means and what they brought to the table for the data. So that's what I most appreciate is the experiences of the students and the fact that they're learning how their voice makes a difference in what they're doing with the data and the analysis of the data.
Absolutely, it does. And, it's a great honor to be that partner, but, that diversity of thought and creativity is super important, right? Just to the future of where AI goes and ensuring that we have the very best solutions. So, that's a great insight. Okay, well, thank you again. It's been a great pleasure, and I'm already working on year 3, Professor Latson.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Take care.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
you.
Great holiday.
Thank you.